I'm the kind of guy that I'll stand in front of a tank. You can run over me, but I'll be biting one of the tracks. No one's going to hurt me or my family. That's American policy here.
Welcome to the Trashcats Trashcast. I'm Richard.
I'm Steven.
And today we're going back in time to solve the siege of Waco. The Waco siege, also known as the Waco Massacre, was the law enforcement siege of the compound that belonged to the religious cult, the Branch Davidians. It was carried out by the U.S. federal government and Texas state law enforcement between February 28th and April 19th, 1993. The Branch Davidians were led by David Koresh and were headquartered at Mount Carmel Center Ranch in the community of Axtell, Texas, about 20 miles northeast of Waco. Suspecting the group of stockpiling illegal weapons, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, obtained a search warrant for the compound and the arrest warrants for Koresh, as well as a select few of the group's members.
Law enforcement did some things right, but a lot more things went wrong, and today we're going to figure out how we, the Trashcats, could have done it better. But first, how was your week?
My week was quite good.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's just been, it's successful as far as business goes. I'm getting my oven and my hood vent painted up nice way I like it. My kitchen's coming together. I started putting that back together this week.
Oh, yeah.
It's been, like one of those, you got to wait for shit to dry and then cure because it's the temper paint or the temperature safe paint. So yeah, it does take a little extra time for that, but it's coming along nice. Going to have a black and gold kitchen by the end of the year.
I have a feeling as soon as you finish that house, you're going to move and start all over again. It's going to be ridiculous.
It's they call it a labor of love.
I guess.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Okay. This week, more chill than last. A lot of reading, writing, and some art time. I'm working on something I really like right now. So
I for sure thought you were going to say some arithmetic.
No arithmetic this week. Fuck, man. I haven't done math in a while. I actually was pretty good at algebra. A student.
Oh, man. I should have copied all your work.
I feel like you would have been good at math.
I mean, I'm good at geometry. I fucking hated algebra.
It's just formulas.
I mean, yeah, but it's so fucking pointless and it wasn't fun. And I mean, granted, at the time I was being a shithead, and I was not focused on trying. So, I mean, there's that too.
I learned everything I know about algebra from playing Minesweeper. Dude, I'm really good at Minesweeper.
Oh man, I feel like I always thought Minesweeper was more. I never got played it that much, so that when I did play it, it was it's more about luck.
Oh yeah, it's like alien symbols till you can see the numbers like you're in the Matrix. I'm talking expert times at right under a minute.
I never understood the rules of it, so
I'll teach you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, thanks. You get me ready for the next fucking Minesweeper competition coming up.
You're our new Neo.
Yeah. Just start walking around in fucking black glasses and trench coats.
Trench coat mafia shit. You got any honorable mentions?
I don't.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm low on inspo, but
everybody sucks.
Yeah, honestly, dude, I'm really frustrated with most of the art I'm seeing on the Instagram shit, artists I followed lately. There's been a huge shift towards AI, and a couple of the artists that I really like, especially prior to AI, are incorporating it in really cool ways. There's some really innovative things some people are doing, but a ton of people have fallen for this AI crypto art shit, and the quality of what they're making is just so fucking lame. There's just, I don't know, I'm seeing the same stuff and all the aesthetic is super techie. Have you noticed that in design stuff for the
yes,
the last
I have, yeah.
5 years? Everything's high tech future shit, heavy typography focus. Nothing is natural or I don't know, classic anymore. It's all glitch tech.
Glitch tech.
I don't want to see circuit board patterns on everything. It's so stupid.
Hey, man, that's what's making them money, though.
I guess so, man.
Gotta do what they gotta do.
Yeah. So, Waco, we're going to solve the siege. I guess to preface, Netflix just put out a new Waco doc, and it did some really cool things, but a lot of it sucked too. Mm-hmm. But they did have a bunch of the previous cult members and people on the rapid response teams, different federal agents and stuff, and that's something they haven't had a lot of those people together speaking on camera much before. So that part of it was pretty interesting. But we kind of wanted to, we're going to do a brief history, but we more just want to get to like a better war games approach to how Waco could have been handled since it went so wrong. So basically the whole siege boils down to a philosophical approach. Do we negotiate with terrorists? Do we tolerate evil? What if they have children as hostages? Passive tolerance or violent intolerance? That's kind of the whole question. I've spent a lot of time examining Waco over the years just because it's got all the fun stuff. It's got religious extremism, psychology, lots of guns and explosives, deadly fires, and it questions autonomy, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and it's all wrapped up into one psychotic little package.
You know, just all the fun stuff.
All the good stuff. I mean, that's what gets you through a shitty day, right?
Absolutely, I guess.
But first, we're going to set the stage and do our due diligence. I'm going to kind of speed run Waco, and then we're going to brainstorm some war tactics. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Now, this quote to kick us off is like one of my favorite quotes ever. This is from David Koresh.
I'm the kind of guy that'll stand in front of a tank. You can run over me, but I'll be biting one of the tracks.
I fucking love it. But before this man could bite the treads of a tank, he was a boy. So let the speed run begin. Sexually abused boy David Koresh grows up and joins a cult to gain some confidence. He joins the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians are an apocalyptic new religious movement founded in 1955. They regard themselves as a continuation of the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. During these years as a member, he studies scripture and begins to exhibit symptoms of mental illness. He eventually seduces one of the Branch Davidian cult leaders, a woman 50 years his senior, and splits the group into warring factions. He commits a hostile takeover with a small group of armed men and ultimately is arrested and put on trial for attempted murder. He beats the case and unites the rest of his followers. Kind of like Snoop Dogg. A nerdier, more extreme Snoop Dogg.
It's exactly like Snoop Dogg. You know, you were reading that and I was like, are you talking about Snoop Dogg?
That must be Snoop Dogg he's talking about. He then begins to build this compound at Mount Carmel in Texas. Eventually, he has hundreds of followers living there, hanging on his every word and interpretation of the Bible. He becomes their prophet and then their Christ figure. And what else do women want except to sleep with God? David separates the married couples and sleeps with anyone he chooses, including and kind of specifically the underage children. Meanwhile, the men and husbands stockpile ammo, grenades, automatic weapons, and even a couple 50 cal rifles, one of which was perched in a tower overlooking his kingdom. In total, Koresh had amassed a loyal following of brainwashed, sex-enslaved women, abused children, and an army of cucked men willing to die for their Messiah, more than 1 million rounds of ammo, and a fortified compound with no escape tunnels.
And for a long time, no one cared, because it was Texas, and these people can worship their gods and their guns however they see fit.
My belt buckle's as big as my hat. From Texas. Till one day, a UPS driver inspects a broken package on its way to the compound and sees part of a grenade. I kind of call bullshit on this part of the story, but that's what they say happened.
Local police call in the ATF and FBI, who decide to raid the compound by surprise with search warrants looking for illegally modified guns and explosives. But loose lips sink ships. On the day of the raid, one agent made an offhand comment to the local mailman to stay clear of the compound that day. Little did he know that the mailman was a follower of Koresh. The mailman pulled a Paul Revere back to the compound before the feds arrived, and David began passing out guns. Despite losing the element of surprise, the feds decide to raid the well-armed cult awaiting them.
Bro, it's always the mailman. Never trust the mailman.
The fucking postal service workers
Dude,
out here snitching.
They know everyone's business. They know what you live, and they know what's coming in and out of your house. I don't like it.
Here's the thing. If you're snitching on the cops, if you're snitching on the government, is it still snitching?
Yes.
That's a philosophy episode in itself.
But upon arrival, the feds attempted verbal negotiations. They promptly failed, and chaos erupted in a hail of bullets. Both sides claimed the other side shot first. This is classic Han Solo and Greedo shit.
The feds had a small army of more than 100 agents, but their firepower and strategic positioning failed by comparison. Helicopters and snipers were deployed as press from around the country began to flock to Waco.
The federal government raided the compound as the whole country watched. The cult killed 4 federal agents. It wasn't in 4K, but the whole country watched David Koresh hold his ground against Uncle Sam. Federal agents were forced to pull back with their tail between their legs. A brief ceasefire was negotiated, and both sides tried to shore up their defenses. Wounded agents were hauled onto the hoods of vehicles and thrown into reporters' cars to be raced to nearby hospitals. The cult would mercy kill their severely wounded. David Koresh himself had been shot twice, but his resolve was only stronger. One bullet had punctured his hand, and another went through his side. His followers said that day he looked even more like Jesus. This had become the largest firefight on U.S. soil since the Civil War, and it was only just getting started.
Jesus fuck. Of course they thought he looked more like Jesus.
Right.
He had the stigmata and everything.
But it's so weak. Like, one through the side and hand, it doesn't even match anything.
Well, he's got the one in his hand.
You get 2 out of 3 wounds? You're like, oh, it's the same thing.
Oh, isn't it 4 if you count the feet, too? Wasn't he nailed through his feet?
Feet, hands, side.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, then here's another one. Do the feet count as one, since weren't they, like, nailed together?
Yeah, but you got to double up. And you know how I mean, you're going through both feet. You can't combine.
True.
If I get a nail,
But I mean, so what I'm saying is, you could stack the feet on top of each other and shoot through that, and then you can.
Yeah, but if I step
two for the price of one.
If I step on one nail with both feet at the same time, I'm not saying I got 1 foot wound. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, true. You're right.
And you know, like how they always show the nails going through his palms.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work that way. They put that shit through your forearm.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen that too. Like, it's got to be
because it ripped
a little
right
higher
through.
up. Yeah,
your hands just. Oh, dude, I just saw a dude with a body mod. This is a new one. Have I ever shown you the Achilles heel mod?
Oh God, no! But that sounds terrifying.
This is like an older one. Like 20 years ago, a dude did it for the first time. He gauged a barbell that goes through his heel in between the ankle bone and the Achilles tendon, and he gauged it up where you can see like a 2-inch hole through his fucking heel. But then a dude just like a month ago did this new one for the first time, where he split his hand in between his middle finger and ring finger. Like, it's like a 4-inch incision. And so it's like he could do the Star Trek thing super far.
But like all the way.
Yeah. And that was like part of why he wanted it done. It looks like he's got spider hands. It's kind of rad.
He looks like that's like the fucking elites from Halo, the fucking Covenant shit.
Exactly like that.
So he's got a hold of a fucking plasma rifle that he couldn't handle it.
But he tries to hold a normal gun and it won't fit right.
It won't do anymore.
Sweet mod, dude.
You do it all for the cosplay, man. So these events began a 51-day stand, often described as a siege. Negotiations went back and forth between David and the FBI. David would lie about turning himself in peacefully in exchange for airtime to express his religious beliefs, and the feds would trade radio time and recorded broadcast for children to be released and pizza to be delivered. Every day and every phone call could always go sideways at any moment, and everything was done under threat of violence.
You know, I kind of have to imagine a hostage pizza probably tastes better than any other pizza you'll ever
the
have.
Best pizza. It's like, man, we're being like held here, like I guess against our will, and like they're not letting us leave. But I mean, this Little C's is tasting fucking right now.
I'd trade 2 of my kids for a fucking slice of pep right now. Dude, I hope at least once in my life I get some hostage pizza. Just once. You can't order that on any menu.
You just happen to be at the bank one day and someone comes in and like, this is a stick up. You're like, fuck yeah.
Start speed dialing the nearest pizza place. So all this was done under the threat of violence, and it was a grueling process, all of which was under the scrutiny of the press and country as a whole. Day after day, federal agents probed the compound for weaknesses while attempting to intimidate the followers into submission. And at night, loud music was played and bright lights were beamed into the compound in an attempt to break their will. I also saw at one point they were playing tapes of the FBI speaking to David Koresh to kind of expose him to the followers. And they also played looped recordings of Tibetan monks chanting. Like all this psychological warfare, pre-Guantanamo Bay shit.
That's crazy. In the documentary, they talked about like the sound of like rabbits being killed and like
that's so fucked.
Like different songs, like pop songs on repeat,
just all night, just beamed at you.
That's not like a. I guess that this was older then. I was going to say the idea of using music for psychological torture. We covered a lot of that in the like post 9/11 episodes.
We need to circle back to that and criminal prosecution on rap lyrics for sure. Yeah. There's over 500 cases now that have been murder conviction or violent convictions due to rap lyrics now. Very interesting. At any moment, things could go wrong, and everyone waited with bated breath to see what would happen next.
In total, more than 2,000 reporters from across the country had amassed a makeshift city to report on daily exchanges and updates. David's bullet wounds had become infected, and his sanity spiraled. He showed no regard for the safety of his people, only his mission.
David's main goal was to get his message to the world.
God speaks to me. I have a message to present. You may not believe that. If you don't believe that, then believe this. Irrespective of God speaking to me. You see this here? See, this is my family. It may not be like your family. You know, it may not be like your family. This one here, you know, he's my family too, right, Joseph?
Yeah.
Tell him, you know, look in that camera and tell him what you think about it. Who's treated you good?
David.
You know, do you mind that, son? Huh? Do you love Joseph? Your best buddies?
Yeah.
You too, Damon? So, you know, you guys, you do it your way, I do it my way. You got to argue with me, you catch me on the side of the road somewhere, you come and argue with me. You come point guns in the direction of my wives and my kids, damn it, I'll meet you at the door any time. And I'm sorry some of you guys got shot. But, hey, God will have to sort that out, won't he?
He attempted to politic and silver-tongue his scriptures to the press in hopes to win public support. David spoke of religious freedom, proclaiming that anyone should be allowed to worship their God however they saw fit. He appealed to the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, but mostly he just babbled endlessly about loving God while holding a gun.
See, I'll meet you at the doorstep any day. You know, and somebody will get hurt. If you want to keep playing that game, I'm talking to you. Somebody's going to get hurt.
He had some success in this regard, as some wackos would offer sympathy and support, but mainly people just thought he was a religious lunatic. But just as many people thought the federal government looked both simultaneously weak and cruel. Throughout these days, there were multiple occasions in which snipers had a clear shot on David Koresh. Killing Koresh could have ended the whole thing, but the shot was never taken, because David used the children as a human shield. He claimed to have standing orders to his men that in the event of his death, at the hand of the government, the children would be executed, and no one wanted to risk calling his bluff. Negotiators were left hoping he died from sepsis, and that the orders weren't real.
During this time, government agencies began to divide in ideology. One group wanted to keep talking things out. The other group wanted to shoot things out. Fortunately, FBI hostage negotiators managed to trade out 21 women and children to safety. The negotiators fought to just keep David talking on the phone, while fending off their more zealous counterparts from storming in. And it worked. For a while, that is.
Because no one's allowed to beat the government. They have tanks. The final days went as following.
On March 24th, 1993, Koresh breaks off negotiations.
April 14th, Koresh sends out word he will surrender after writing a manuscript in which he reveals the contents of the 7 seals referred in the book of Revelations in the Bible.
April 16th, FBI agent says agency has its own time schedule and won't wait forever for Koresh to give up.
April 19th, it began with tear gas. Federal agents launched CS tear gas grenades through holes in windows throughout the compound as the cult followers scrambled for their gas masks. Meanwhile, an armored vehicle with a ram used a delivery device to pump in additional gas. Then a tank began battering the exterior walls, systematically crushing entire sections of the building as they collapsed into rubble. The country watched live on TV in horror, fearing for the lives of the trapped children.
The goal was to dismantle areas of the compound they knew the cult weren't currently residing in and attempt to drive them out to avoid suffocating on the tear gas. One way or another, this was the end.
But one thing law enforcement seems to conveniently forget is that most tear gas is flammable, and when it's compressed into tight spaces without much air, not only can it burn, it explodes.
As the tank treads crunched through debris, dark smoke began to pour out.
Shortly thereafter, the Mount Carmel Center was engulfed in flames. The fire resulted in the death of 76 Branch Davidians, including 25 children, 2 pregnant women, and David Koresh himself. In total, the 51-day siege resulted in the death of 4 federal agents and 82 Branch Davidians, and 28 of them were children.
Both sides would claim the other intentionally started the fire. Whether it was because they were trapped or by Koresh's command, forensic evidence would later discover many of those who died inside were shot through the head before the fires burned their corpses. David Koresh's body was eventually confirmed by dental records. His skull had a bullet wound through the forehead.
And the rest of the country lived happily ever after.
The end.
That's what happened at Waco. I'm sure we got a couple facts wrong, and there's a lot of opinions on both sides on specifically how the last day went relating to the fire and destruction of the compound specifically. There's a lot of evidence on both sides. There's actually audio recordings of the cultists, David and the members talking about gas, them already having spread accelerant through the building, that David was willing to kill them all, and that many of the corpses were proven to have been shot in the head prior or approximately the same time as the fires. So it's hard to say for sure, but a lot of things were fucked. And at the very least, it's very convenient that this gas caught fire, because this wasn't new information. This has happened like at least 10 times prior, where the FBI gasses a small enclosed area and they go in and everything catches fire. This is something they knew was a risk. They took no precautions. They had no like medical staff nearby. They were ready for it to go however it went. So I could see a little bit on both sides on why the last day itself was so terrible. I do find it pretty fascinating that they were able to have this 51-day siege. Like, that is a long time for how intolerant our government is with things like this. An armed group of extremists, I mean, to to negotiate with them for 50 some days is kind of impressive. Not that it necessarily should be, but if it was an ISIS cell, there's no way that would last 48 hours. I think the main thing that made this so difficult for everyone involved is the children, because they were the ultimate like bargaining chip,
Right.
and really made it a lot more ethically difficult.
Yeah, these children didn't choose to pick up their shit and move here,
Right.
like the adults did. So like the adults here made a choice. These kids have no say in the matter here.
Yeah, and then also the 50 cal rifles, to me, it felt like that was like often overstated or exaggerated how big of a deal that was. But the reality is that David Koresh's people were more superiorly armed. They had the higher ground, and they had these 50 cal rifles that could shoot through pretty much any armor or vehicle the feds had. So it's kind of easy to think like, oh, they could have a tactic where they get closer, they sneak in, or they use barriers. But when you have someone that has the highest overwatch vantage point and they can shoot through pretty much anything you have and will kill you in one shot, it's pretty hard for people to be super brave. So
Right.
it's there's a lot of moving parts at play, and it just kept dragging on. So we saw how it ended, and initially they had some good results. Trading out 21 people is fairly successful in a situation like that. But I would like to think there could have been ways to have done it better. And there's some interesting things that were developed from this. The FBI's on the Justice Department's website currently, they have some, what do you call it? The after perspective, what do you call it?
Hindsight?
Yeah, it's like a bit like a hindsight report. There's a word for it, but they break down how it could have been handled better. And the biggest things that they concluded in their own reports were better interagency communication, because there were these two different factions by the federal agents of like, are we going in, or are we gonna do this peacefully? So better interagency communication, better like logistics for communication, how to set up a situation like this. And then what was very telling was the big one they had was funding for better chemical weapons. It felt like the report, that was like one of the big things they wanted to hit on, that, hey, this could have gone so much better if only we were...
If only we spent more money on law enforcement in the military.
Yes. So I found that very telling. I see some good things about that, but it's rarely used that way. So, but I don't know. I thought it'd be interesting for us to kind of war game it, see what, if we were in charge, how the fuck we would have gone about handling this. So, do you want to kick us off, or just gonna see where this takes us?
Well,
what could you have done better?
Well, I really do think that the number one thing that comes to mind of like the things that I can foresee on my own of like just being a fucking asshole that has a podcast. The first thing that I foresaw was like when they're talking about we're going to divide and they'll play good cop and bad cop, but then they don't talk to each other about their own plans and shit. Like that's fuck up number one. Like you can, quote unquote divide and, try to be that way, but you have to have that communication. Everyone has to be the same unit.
They were telling the negotiators like, hey, keep them talking. We're going to work this out. And then right after they'd meet with negotiators, they'd meet with the rapid response team and they'd be like, we're going in today. Like, and this was happening like day after day where each group was getting different orders on how this would go, and it would affect communications, negotiations. They were just stepping on their toes the whole fucking time.
Yeah. And I get where the argument of like, this is a stressful situation. So for like the people that are calling shots in this situation, like, it's, to be approached by one team talking about we're going to go in, we're going to do this. I think at one point they mentioned that in the documentary where they're like, I would go over and say, hey, we're going to pump the brakes. We're going to talk and we're going to try to do this peacefully. And the guy's like, yes, that sounds like a good idea. And then like 2 minutes later, the guy turned around and like, someone else comes up and, hey, we're going to, like, we want to speed this up. We're going to, you know, move on. Yeah. And it's like, all right, cool, go for it. And it's like, you can't, that's not leadership. It's just shitty.
It doesn't, yeah, you're right. But I feel like we have to get to the bigger question, because it's almost, do we negotiate with terrorists? Are you trying to talk it out, or are you trying to raid them? Like, what is your play? Because we could go back and forth on like, oh, we need better systems for how they could have.
Well, I mean, so that was number one. That's the thing of like, if they had stuck together as a one unit, as one team,
solidarity.
Yeah, that would have made the next part easier.
Anything. Okay,
I think it would have made it easier because you do have the kids involved and whatnot. So what you do is I think a lot of teams were attempting to do the right thing by, I think, talking it out, trying to get as many kids up out of there as possible.
Are you saying we shouldn't kill the kids?
Yes, I'm saying we shouldn't kill the kids.
I'm joking, but this is a valid question. Why do we if we ignore that they're a cult, right? That they're, oh, it's David Koresh and the Branch Davidians. If it was a terrorist cell, we never for a second would think of like honoring their children's lives. This is like very bitter realism, but why do we honor the children's lives if their parents are the one holding automatic weapons?
Well, here's the crazy thing, Stephen, is honestly, I don't think we should have killed. I think that killing the adults also was a bad idea. So,
ooh, this is gonna get interesting.
So let me go through with this. The ideal situation would have been get them to come out, get them to walk out.
How you doing that?
Let me go through my process first. The ideal situation is get them to come out, get them to go to, like they did with the one girl, they go to fucking, take her to prison. Take her, like keeping them alive, but also that breaks.
Can I just expand on that? The only reason she was willing to leave to go to prison was because her children were traded out without her approval by David Koresh for supplies. Right. And the government basically like guilted her into saying her son was kind of sick and they really missed her. And eventually they got her to come out of guilt or love for her children and betray her group. But there's no chance in hell David Koresh was ever going to leave there alive or submit.
And that I agree with.
And I think
I do agree with that being the case. So that's where I was going with that when I said this is ideally the situation where you get everyone to come out and you get them to prison and no one's got to die more than they already have. That's the ideal situation.
Okay. Realistically,
I think that there does come a point where even if they had gotten more people out, even if they were like, guilt tripped more of the parents and then like, reached out to a couple more of them and a couple more people were like, I can't do this anymore. Like they reached their breaking point on it. They realized this, their faith was misguiding them, whatever reason they had, and they left. There comes a point where that line is not going to grow anymore. Like that group is not going to grow anymore.
Sure.
There's going to be your sect that's inside in the middle that they're going to die in that building.
Yeah.
They'd rather die in that building than come out. So that being said, I feel like, yeah, it's true. They probably could have gotten more people out, but I don't see this happening. I don't see this ending really any different than, I don't see this ever actually ending any different than it actually did.
So basically what you're telling me is you would have tried to continue negotiations and minimize harm by communication, basically.
Yes.
What happens when they want 50 days? How many days are you going to go? You going to hit 100, 200? You want to be there a year?
That's another one, man. That's one where I can't even begin to answer that question because
as long as it takes.
It's like, I don't know what it felt like to be there. I don't know.
Oh, dude, I think you're being too empathetic. We should have just killed them all.
Okay, explain to me why.
I don't know. I don't actually think we should just have stormed the gates and killed them all. I think that would be bad. I think 50 days is too long, though. The reality is that I don't think religious extremism should be tolerated in any form. And if these people are willing to hold their children hostage, I think the choice has already been made, right? I don't want any of those kids to be hurt, but this is what their parents have done. And
correct. Yeah.
I think at some point it's irreversible. Honestly, I don't really understand why they couldn't have just used like different gas. Like, I don't know the logistics of knockout gas, but like, even if they used the gas they were, why the fuck do you have to raid it with a tank?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
what,
There was some other.
There were levels of moderation before intentionally risking fires. But for all I know, that, you know, you could have thrown one canister in and David Koresh was still going to set fire. Like, it's
right.
Very complicated. But I think, right, the best approaches you could have is the sniper route, is the, like, assassin dagger shit, where you have a small group of men doing a covert mission. And I think there were opportunities for that. One of the snipers spoke himself in this latest documentary about him having a shot on Koresh multiple times. And at that point in the siege, no one was willing to take the chance. They really believed that Koresh's men were going to start executing children. And I fully believe he would have been willing to give those orders. I don't know if that's actually how it would have played out, though. I feel like if you get the shot on a Bin Laden or the leader of the cult holding everybody mentally hostage, you take the shot without question, regardless of what the orders are. I think there's the chance of less harm that way is always going to be higher than letting it play out for even longer, where more things can go wrong. I think sometimes, even if it's not the most harmless approach, I think just cutting the length of time where things could go wrong down can make a big difference. So those are, like, to me, what I would feel like is the most ideal approach. Because frankly, this group is fully insane. David Koresh has proved himself extremely violent and increasingly mentally ill. When he took over the cult, it was with a group of armed men, putting guns to the other leaders and taking the cult. Everyone knew this was who he was. They had millions of rounds of ammo, explosives, 50 cals. This was never going to end well. And I think just because you have it, and they've proved they're willing to kill agents, I think you have to do something, I don't know, a little bit more extreme. Now my thought on that, because I would like to avoid storming it. So what I kind of came down to is that if we're going to call this a siege, I think it needed to be a true siege. And if raiding is going to be last resort, I think what they really should have fucking done. Here's my final answer. I've been thinking about this all week, and this is like the best I can come up with. Is you literally build a perimeter, or ideally a fucking wall around that compound, and you starve them out. If they're willing to let their kids starve,
you heard it here first, folks, on the Trashcats. Build a wall. Let's build a wall
around the cult, for real.
Around the cult of Waco.
Nothing in, nothing out, unless you're disavowing. And if they never want to leave, and they want to cannibalize each other in there and survive for years, and David Koresh can pick the bones of his followers, you know what? Fuck them. They already made their choice. I think it should have been fucking sanctioned off, for fucking quarantined. And if they want to kill each other or starve, that's their choice. But we don't let them back into our world because they've proven they don't deserve to be there.
I don't fully disagree with you. I think there's extremism in that
no pizzas.
Yeah,
no fucking
no
for
fucking
real,
yeah.
Unless
they
we're
did everything.
trading,
So basically, everything that they did, but take away the pizza, take away the pizza parties.
No, but to be fair, I wouldn't have done the blaring mute like those other things, or the negotiate on the phone where these dudes talk like fucking like I don't know. They talked so fucking weak to Koresh. Just listening to him whine and talk about his god shit while like threatening people, and they just
isn't that a negotiation tactic where you let them believe that like they are,
you build rapport, all those things. But a lot of more like modern approaches in negotiating have criticized how those guys did it, because you may have to do that with some people to an extent, but this was like Koresh was commanding them. They were in awe of him to some extent, whether it was just out of like surprise of his crazy or just like scared of him, going over the edge or whatever. Like he was the one in charge on all of those transcripts and phone calls. I mean, ultimately the Fed still had the power, but these negotiators just sounded so weak, and you're never going to command any true respect or rapport with a man like Koresh by like just folding to him every single time. I don't think they should have been on the phone talking to him. I don't think you give them any food unless they are sending people out, but you're not doing this like, oh, please let it end peacefully thing. Like we're the government, but could you please not kill people? I don't know.
To be fair, I do want to say that even if their biggest goal like was to stop it, but also like just getting people out,
but
even if they knew that like
anything to get people out, and I don't think that should be how it's looked at.
I feel like that's the only way to attempt to do that would be to communicate. Otherwise, it's just going to be like you're guaranteeing it ends in everyone dying.
Here's the question. If you're one of the negotiators and you have a button on your desk. This button, if you press, kills every adult in the compound instantly. Are you pressing the button?
Every adult in the compound?
Every adult. No children. They'll be spared, but you kill every adult with the push.
What day is it?
We'll give this some mustard. We'll put it on day 10. By day 11, button's gone.
I like that.
You gotta be decisive.
I think I wouldn't, but I would want to, if that makes sense. So like I know
I'm pushing that button at day 1.
Yeah, I know. I want to say that like that would end everything. They deserve to, like they deserve that, and then if that means that you get the kids out, the innocents out, then sure, But in reality, I don't think I would do it.
I don't think you should be a negotiator.
I mean, that's fair. I'm not. I make smoothies for a living, dog.
You're just too empathetic, which in most situations is good. In daily life, it's an amazing thing. I don't know if it's the best thing in a cult standoff. I feel like if you could end all of those adults' lives instantly and save all the children, that should 100% always be the play. And I think this kind of goes back to, and we've talked about this before, is it kind of depends on if you see the adult cult members as victims or not. Because if they're victims, right?
Yeah.
They've been brainwashed to some extent. We have empathy for them. We don't feel like they should die. But if we don't see them as victims, then they are the guilty people holding the guns. I tend to see it as they're the ones holding the guns. So
Yeah. Is it, are they holding guns because they're criminals, or are they holding guns because they're mentally ill?
Yeah, to me,
You don't consider the why.
I don't look at them as criminals. To me, the criminality isn't even a factor. I look at them as, I don't think sick's the right word either, but just wrong. It doesn't matter to me why they're thinking the way they're thinking. I think ideologically they're wrong.
But if they're thinking that because they arguably don't know any better, because they're mentally ill.
So to you, let's say there's two worlds, right? There's one universe A, all of the adults holding the children hostage are catastrophically schizophrenic and have been abused their whole lives and brainwashed using MK Ultra techniques by the government themselves, and they ended up in this situation and they don't know what they're doing. Completely mentally incompetent, right? Yeah. That's universe A.
Yeah.
Universe B, they are people that have spent their whole lives studying philosophy, scripture, and for whatever reason, they just thought this would be a really smart, good thing to do. They did it for ideological purposes, and they're sticking by their principles. So they take all these kids, right?
Yeah.
Between universe A and B, does that change your approach? How think the timeline's the exact same?
Let me say this. In either universe, you never know which one is which if you push the button on the first day.
That's a very wise perspective, I would say.
You never know the potential of, but could we save some of these? Can we help some of these people that are in a bad situation?
Do
all of these people want to be here? Are they doing this because they want to do this because it's the right thing to do? Or is it because they're being told that this is the right thing to do?
Now, if we take an even bigger step back, I think there are, and I've had to think about this a lot, there's a lot of reasons why I can justify, if I want to, why I don't think the cult was doing anything that bad. Because I think people should be allowed to have as many fucking guns or weapons as they want. I think they should have the freedom to say crazy shit, even if it's wrong. I don't think we should tolerate religious extremism or really any form of theism at all, but I think we should have that freedom even if I hate it. So part of me can kind of get lost in the weeds in thinking like, hey, this is their choice. If they all want to live in this world where they let their kids be abused by Jesus Christ himself and shoot guns and prepare for the apocalypse, God bless, right? Part of me feels that, where I think that is terrible, potentially like an evil or whatever, but I think people should be allowed to do that despite how disgusting I think it is.
Because you're a fucking libertarian.
Yeah, I kind of think I am in like on the political spectrum.
You don't like the idea of laws in general.
Yeah. I think we should be allowed to do whatever we want as long as we're not hurting anyone. I think the argument of, I guess, when they are choosing to let their kids be abused, I think there is room for intervention. But that's pretty hard to know because that's not even what the search warrants were about, right? That's stuff that comes out after or was suspected. I don't know if some strange group is living in the woods fucking each other, if I have the right to say, you can't do that, even if I do think it's bad. I think maybe when a child's involved, you do have the right, but it's not as clear as I think people made it out to be. Like, this group is, I don't know. I'm getting lost already, but do you know what I mean?
Yes. The thing that I feel like I struggle with the most, and it's to your points, the things that I struggle with the most is there's always the thought that like these parents are allowing these things every day. Even before the siege happened, these parents are allowing these things to happen. Koresh had all of these people convinced that the age of consent was 12.
Or younger.
Or younger, yeah. So like they would like hand over their daughters to him. It was seen as like a privilege, which is absurd. That part, like within that group, I'm sure it wasn't all of them that were just mentally ill or were, brainwashed or confused, or like that couldn't have been all of them.
No.
Regardless, that they went along with that. That being said, that's the thing that sticks in my mind that makes me like flip on the pushing the button problem. That's the thing that makes me want to push the button, right?
See, I feel like if we were actually in this situation, you would have been on the negotiating team and I would have been on the raid team, and I would have been like whispering evil shit into your ear to get you to push the button and kill him. Because
you'd have been negotiating with me, like my the devil on the shoulder conscious.
We're going in, man. Look what they did. Because I think that's the reality for me, though, is that I think people should have the freedom to like live in these like unnormative environments if they so choose so, if they're not hurting their kids.
Yeah.
Like I think even having the weaponry, I don't see as bad.
Right.
But I think
it's strange, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Or it might be like, bad,
why do you need this? Sure. Why is this a thing?
But I think I'm clarifying my thoughts as we're speaking it out. I think what I'm going to fall back upon is that these parents, despite what has occurred to them, they are the caregivers responsible for these children, and they have chosen to put their kids through this. And despite whatever good reasons they could have, I kind of feel like they deserve to die.
Yeah.
And I think by any means necessary, ideally saving as many of the kids as possible, but realistically, they probably all are going to die. I think building the wall and having no other interventions and letting those people decide what happens to them is
Cask of Monolato, the whole fucking compound.
Yeah, what about biological warfare too? You have them sealed in, right? True siege, and you start poisoning them. Ideally non-lethal.
They say, aren't we not allowed to do that? It's like a Geneva Convention thing, isn't that what that's about?
I don't honor the Geneva.
Here at the Trashcats, we never stopped me before.
Never stopped me from poisoning nobody. I'm not gonna start now. I don't think it's stopped the U.S. either. We've broken twice this year. We've broken what is it? The Geneva Convention. There's another like worldwide war ethics standard. We've broke those twice this year.
Just in 2023.
Yeah.
Damn. Ain't that some shit?
Yeah, we've never. I don't think once the U.S. has ever been reprimanded for stepping over guidelines.
Well, of course not. Right. We're the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, we're
rock, flag, and eagle, baby.
We're the leading faction of the UN, so who the fuck would hold us accountable?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you have to starve them out, and I think there could be a multi-pronged approach where you build the perimeter, ideally a 10 million foot tall wall, fucking force field wall, but then every day you just move another foot closer in. You keep bringing the wall in, making their world smaller. Ideally...
So you're talking about like a magical ward that you can just shrink.
Ideally with the goal of like normalizing the the amount of space between you and them. I feel like that would be an approach between the talk and the shoot it out method, because you're not physically engaging, but you keep getting closer to the point where ideally it would be normalized that you're on the other side of the wall with them throughout the siege, and that you could make, I don't know, in-grounds of communication there. I don't think that would necessarily be my approach, but I feel like there's a way you could have got people in a situation where you could be talking on the other side of the fence, kind of like Home Improvement. with Tim Allen
with fucking
and
Wilson over the fence.
That's my ideal situation to solve Waco. It's a Tim Allen moment, you know?
It's fucking Tim. Just get Tim Allen out here. What was he doing? He was probably filming Home Improvement right then. Get his ass out there.
We can Home Improvement right out of this.
Fucking get Richard Karn on the case.
But it feels like when a group's already gone that far, it's kind of, I mean, I know you said it too, but it is inevitable that a lot of them are going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really do. I feel like it's not that I can see where, obviously I can see where mistakes were made, but realistically I don't, if the idea was to try to be lawful, be good about the approach and like helping nature of it, trying to save people, not to doubt people, but to give them the opportunity. If that's the way that you're going to approach it, I think they probably did about the best they could fucking do. In a situation where all of the variables
outside of the fire, I would probably.
Yeah.
And I know that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Outside of the end day, I think.
And I think all of the major things that fucked that up was the lack of communication. That really fucked a lot of shit up. They probably could have saved a lot more kids, but that's not the way it shook out. And I feel like, honestly, with the amount of people that they did save, with the amount of kids, and it was like 3 women.
They got out 21 children. I'm not positive how many women.
It's like the fact that they got that many, considering how extreme we now know the cult was, and how extreme, how devoted so many people in there were to it. I feel like you got to call that at least kind of a win. Mm-hmm. It's not. It could have been worse. It could have been better.
Couldn't have been too much worse, though. We almost killed everyone.
Yeah.
I guess we saved 20 kids, right? That's something.
Yeah. Like it could have, it could have ended. About. It could have ended the fucking second day and they all drank Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, if we kind of, so I feel like we have a few theories. It could have gone better, whether it seems like your approach definitely would have been better negotiations, more goodwill, trying to really use better empathy and communication while understanding that it's ultimately going to end in death, to try to minimize the harm specifically to the kids.
Right.
My approach is probably more medieval siege and hope we can pressure them out, knowing fully well a lot, if not most of them, are going to die, but that I will not negotiate with terrorists. That's kind of...
And that's the other one, is like how many people out there were willing to go that direction with the idea that they were probably going to die too.
Well, I think the country, like kind of like the Iraq War, I feel like is a comparable example. I feel like you have like 51% of the country who says, fuck them all, we're raiding it right now. Where like, I don't want to negotiate with them, but I also don't think we should just fucking firebomb them either. But I feel like realistically, 51% of the country is watching this on the news day after day, wondering why the fuck we didn't go in there the first day, you know? So there was a lot of mounting pressure for them to just end it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's just really hard when you have this crazy fucking group inside a country where most people at the time probably wanted them to die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like the negotiators really were like a saving grace or a line of defense that may have been the only thing that kept any of those children alive, because most people wanted them dead, and the military, the government in general, is going to fold to that pressure pretty easily.
Yeah.
So if we take a step back and we look big picture, right? If we want to get a little more abstract or spin this a bit, do we feel like, I feel like the three big things at play are right to religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of self-defense. Do we feel like people have the right to worship their God however they want?
So it's when it infringes on other people in a harmful way. That's kind of like the rule of thumb in this country, where it's like, like religions or cults that are just around longer, but when it causes someone to do things that harm themselves or others, that's, I think, when we take notice of it, when people take notice of it more. I mean, you and I sit here all day and we, you know, talk about religions in general, that it happens all the time, that it's not really, you know, happening as strong. It's not as blatant as, you know, the priest convincing everyone to leave their spouses to sleep with him and, you know, let me sleep with your children and the shit like that. It's not as blatant as that is.
Mm.
But I think that a lot of people look past, you know, Christianity and, you know, Judaism, Islam and shit like that, because it's just, these are accepted religions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when it's something that's hurting people, that's when people actually start to take notice, which is shitty. It's like we should hold more people more accountable for the shit that's happening, the fucking brainwashing in general that's happening in religion every day. But
I was really trying to listen to what you have to say, and I'm glad I did, because you just helped further an argument I've been trying to flesh out. Because there's a direct, if I say, being the full freedom person I am, right, the only true libertarian left.
Yeah.
If I say people should have as much freedom as possible, it would be blatantly hypocritical of me to say people should not be allowed to worship their God, right?
Correct. Yeah.
If I believe in freedom, I have to let people believe what they want to believe. And I've struggled with this thought for a long time. And I think what I've been whittling it down to, and what you just said helped, I think, get me where I needed to go, is that, right, we have your good guideline that as long as it doesn't harm other people, right?
Yeah.
I think my next argument is that any form of group worship is inherently harming the other people you're worshiping with.
I think, because I also said harming yourself, which
I think we should be allowed to harm ourselves, though. But so if one person prays alone in a room to their make-believe wizard in the sky, I believe they're hurting themselves. They may think they're healing themselves. But even if it is hurting themselves, I believe that should be allowed. But if two people are praying in a room together, now I think there's an argument that you're hurting the other person. And in my world, ideally, I would want any form of group worship to not be acceptable. No churches. I think people should be allowed to believe and worship their God as long as they're not harming anybody, however the fuck they want. You can believe as much schizo, crazy bullshit in your head as you want. But as soon as you congregate with another individual to believe that and worship together, I think you're doing harm.
Now, the problem with that, the main issue you're going to run into with that is that every religion I've ever seen or heard of, their main goal is to spread it.
Yes.
Their main goal is to share it with a friend, share it with your neighbors, get somebody, you bring someone to church with you.
Because they're viruses. They
only profit when they have more people.
Yeah, right. So I would inherently be at war with any organized religion.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting.
I think realistically that's already where I am today, and I think it's the most important fight there is in the world.
I think that there is
infinite evil can come from two people praying.
It's got to be a long game. If you want to win, it's gonna be a long game. You just
mental illness.
You just said not too many episodes ago we were talking about the declining rate of Christians in America, and your comment was that you were afraid it was happening too quickly because of what that could mean for people. So the long-term release of this grip that religion has on people is the safer bet.
I was playing devil's advocate. I mean, I see some downsides.
You were playing God's advocate in that one.
I was, but if I see some downsides to it happening too rapidly, but if I'm in the world where I get to play executioner,
you're going to execute.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it happening.
Executioner's going to execute.
I think it's the biggest problem there is. This is the stem of all political problems, any cult action, pretty much all worldwide violence. I see no more righteous war to be held than to fight the churches.
I don't think it's the stem of all political problems.
It is.
I think it's used. I think it's used as a lot of cover up for political issues that are more based in money
or culture or race.
I think more often people have to turn to but I'm a good Christian and that's why I'm gonna
but without that,
be the right choice. But that's a cover up for. You're saying that is part of I think it's part of the problem. I don't think that's the main issue with a corrupt politician. I think they can use that.
I understand your point because most Christians who are going to be anti-abortion are going to say it's because of their God, and then they're not going to go to church that Sunday, and they're not going to read their Bible, and they don't fucking know anything about their own religion, right? I understand how, it's a justification, but it isn't the root necessarily.
What more of I'm saying is that the corrupt politician's going to be a corrupt politician regardless. Religion.
What are we talking about? Corrupt politicians.
You said the root of problem in politics.
All politics, but politics is people. I don't give a fuck.
Oh, okay. I thought you were specifically talking about politics as in politicians. You can see where I made that mistake.
Yeah, totally.
Social politics.
Well, I mean, individuals' politics is what chooses the politicians. There's no difference. Yeah. Right? Like 10,000 people who are stupid as fuck and believe in their stupid God tells them to hate gay people is why we have a DeSantis or whoever the fuck, right?
The people that were fucking livid that Obama might have been a Muslim, and they're like, what? Like, we can't have that in our. It's like fucking Christians, man. Not too far away, man. It's fucking. And you can't be a fucking politician without being a Christian, without being religious.
Yeah.
Without claiming to be, I should say.
It sucks because I feel like often at this point in these conversations, there's a point where you almost have to defend Obama, and it really sucks because he was a total piece of shit too, and he gets so much cover because he's so much lesser of an evil, but he's still an absolute piece of shit.
Oh, but he was so much better to watch give press conferences and interviews.
Absolutely.
He brought me way more comfort than the last two presidents.
So what? The last two?
Yeah.
Dude, Biden's better than Obama. I think by situation.
I think, okay, by situation, I'm sure. But also, I really do. I struggle with the fact that he's, I'm waiting for, him to trip and hit something.
Break every bone in his body at once on this way to
bone in his body.
Eating a piece of pizza shatters 8 bones. We'll see. So I feel like I really can make an argument out of religious congregation is harm, and that's why that individual like David Koresh should be allowed to build his own compound and believe whatever the fuck shit he wants and have as many guns and say as much crazy shit as he wants. But as soon as he brings another person in to pray with him, then it's doing harm. I feel like there's an argument there in my world, at least.
Yeah.
I think the next question we could go to is freedom of speech. Should it be tolerated that people are allowed to, I don't know, expel so much like religious freedom of speech, or even, often on the verge of violent rhetoric? I mean, scholastic terrorism.
The way I understand it to work, I mean, even currently, is like you're allowed to be a bigot. You're allowed to be to believe, think the way you want to, talk the way you want to. You can do all of that, no problem.
Absolutely.
The problem is
imminent threat is the only.
There's that, and there's also the thing where what people they feel like is an infringement of freedom of speech, but it's not, is that you can say all the things you want to, but there will be consequences for, it's not just things that you do, it's things that you say. And if you come out talking about
I hate this argument.
But it's so fucking true, though.
But it's not relevant to what the law is. That's the problem. Is I think people get confused here because it's not about if there's consequences. It's about on what's legal or what's not. And the only thing that is legal, it doesn't matter what the consequences are, unless the consequences are jail or prison or something. A legal repercussion for saying something that is illegal. Well, any other consequences are irrelevant.
I don't think that that's true. I think that the people get upset about, they're saying that they're being persecuted.
But that's social, not legal, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that people are claiming that they're being persecuted because they're using their freedom of speech, and they should be protected by that.
I follow you. Like they're getting banned on Twitter because
Yeah, but that's not how that works. You can say the things you want to, you can believe the things you want to, but there are consequences to those things that you say and think, because people will, some people will side with you and you'll get their business, you'll get their attention, sure. But when other people that don't agree with you and think that you shouldn't be saying those things,
you get paid for it, or you get banned from a private platform on the internet.
Right, exactly.
But I guess
you're not being kicked out of, a public place. You're being, banned from a private area.
I guess what I was trying to get at is, to me, I don't like that the line of like, oh, there's consequences, because to me that is completely irrelevant, because the argument is not, it's not like what consequences you get back socially. It's on legally, should you be allowed to say violent things? Should you be allowed to use hate speech? Should you be allowed to get on a radio broadcast, say the end times are here, and talk about everyone burning alive? Like the social repercussions of saying something online or something unfavorable are irrelevant. All these people that are being persecuted and shit for their freedom of speech are fucking idiots.
What are your points of view on that then? On the freedom of speech, the law side of it.
That's for me. I honestly think the United States has the best freedom of speech laws out of any country right now. In many countries, if you say the N-word, if you make a very passive threat on the internet, on Facebook, on Twitter, you're fined and cops are at your door overnight. Like if you say you fucking wish a politician would die on a Facebook post, you are going to have cops at your door. Like that seems like very Orwellian, but that is like a very common thing now. Mm-hmm. Mandatory psych holds, fines. Even in the US, you're getting flagged, banned, stuff. But the reality is, you can say you want to kill a politician. That is legal. You could say you hate everyone of X race, Y race. That is all perfectly legal and is protected.
As long as you don't say, I'm going to.
Honestly, you often can even say you're going to. You just, the legally defining thing is it can't be imminent. And imminent, from my understanding, is you can't say it is going to happen at this time. Now, if I say I'm going to kill this person, that can be taken as a threat and things can happen. Like there can be legal pushback from that. But unless you're making a clear, credible threat that is imminent in the sense that it is believed it's going to happen in a time frame,
the difference is good. What's the rest of your page look like? What's the rest of your feed look like?
Well,
is this
the context it's in?
Yeah. It's is this a thing that you say this literally every day for the last 12 years and nothing's happened? Then maybe it's okay. Maybe nothing's actually going to happen.
But there was a politician, Democrat, 2 weeks ago that made a big post about how hate speech is not protected speech. This was our big thing. Like, hate speech isn't protected. Like, there are social repercussions, sure. You can get kicked off Twitter. You can have people hate you, whatever. But legally, yes, hate speech is protected speech, and we should be allowed to make threats if we want, as long as it's not a credible threat that you're going to actually do violence. Like, I just think it's so undervalued because in the US, our freedom of speech laws are currently actively being eroded. Yeah. And both right and left are not protecting this. The right thinks they are like the bastion of hope for this, but they're all too fucking stupid to understand what's happening. Yeah. And the left is actively destroying it. So it's like...
So here's... I want to say I agree with you that in the U.S. we do have an incredible amount of freedom of speech.
By comparison, I still think it could go farther, but it's the best we got in the world, basically.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how it could go further. Because there's like...
I think I should be allowed to say I'm going to kill someone at noon tomorrow.
Well, that's the thing is...
But if I don't do it, I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is when you do that, and maybe you haven't done anything wrong per se of actually doing that, what you did do is potentially put that person into a state of fear.
I agree, but me personally, I understand...
You affected their life in a negative way. You have hurt that person emotionally or mentally. And it may not be a physical killing of that person.
I think that's acceptable, though. I understand it's not. And I can even understand maybe I don't want a country where everyone is allowed to do that because it could get pretty nasty. But me personally, I think that's how I think it should be allowed. I accept that it is not. But I think until the moment you do something, you did not do it. I think any entrapment case, any school shooter, have the gun in your bag loaded, your finger on the trigger. Until you pull that trigger, you did not. And I don't feel like the threat of violence is the equivalent of violence in the way in which we treat it legally.
Where in the steps of, okay, let's say... someone posts that they're going to go kill a specific person tomorrow. and and they get all the things to do it. And then, like, the entire path of that from that moment until the day when they're walking up the fucking doorstep to that person's house or whatever, at what point does it go from being innocent
to a real crime?
Intention to do crime?
Well, it's intention the whole time, but I don't think intention should be a crime. I don't believe in thought crime because I'm not a fascist.
Well, that's the thing. If intention, if intention isn't a crime, then you can never prevent crime in that way.
Yes, because the justice system is not meant to be proactive. It's reactive. You react to a crime happening, not before it. If someone's walking up to me, they've been proving...
that's the way that it is, but I don't think that's the way that it should be.
Dude, it's the opposite.
I think that it's not the way that it should be in the way that if someone can be stopped from committing a crime.
How are you going to do that? You want to read everyone's messages?
That's the thing, is you can't do it on it. That's where you have the limit of the privacy. But if someone goes out into a public forum or
so what are you going to do when
and they say, I'm going to go commit this crime tomorrow? It shouldn't be like it shouldn't be wild that someone, the police show up and they're like, hey, you're gonna try to rob this place. You're gonna go kill these people right now, and you're like, yeah, and they're like, okay, no, we're not gonna let you do that.
I should be allowed to say whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah, you can say that, sure, but then along that path, they can still stop you from doing that. It's still a crime to do that.
I disagree, because they're not stopping you from doing it unless you were going to do it. And they
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly the point that I'm trying to say. If you say it, sure. It's because let me say I'm also on the idea of I'm okay with everyone being allowed to say as much hate speech and bullshit as you want to. I'm cool with that. Mostly because it points out to everyone when people feel comfortable using hate speech and shit, it just makes it more comfortable for people to do it. They can put their hoods on in public, and then everyone knows, okay, this person's fucked up. I don't want to associate with that person anymore.
I hate that.
Why? Why do you hate that?
I hate it because
I think
words are meant to be expressed.
Words can be expressed. That's fine.
I don't find it acceptable to treat people's intentions, words, or even preparation to commit violence as violence itself. If we catch this guy's posting all month about how he's going to kill this politician. He's got all the ammo. He's posting all the pictures. He got the manifesto. I don't think they should be arresting him, even when they're a block away from the person. The reality is, the only person that should be able to stop them is the person they were going to hurt, because we don't know if they are even going to do it. We don't know. We can say there is so much evidence they were going to. Here's the counter, though, is that the person who is intended to be harmed, if they choose to defend themselves and they shoot first, I feel like they have a case for self-defense. I feel like that is valid self-defense, but I don't feel like the law has the right to intervene before something might happen.
Let me ask you what about your opinion on the word intention then? Because if they are if they are posting, if they are public about their what they're going to do and give you the post, and here's the thing I'm going to use to do it, and this is my plan, and if they do all of that, that's the message that they're giving, not just, the close people that are within earshot, but they're posting that and giving that information away. Mm-hmm. If that's what their whole thing is, if that's like what the information that the world is getting from them, what difference is that? Like, why wouldn't it make sense from a logical point of view to make the assumption that they have the intent
they do
to
have
kill
the
this
intent.
person.
They do have the intent, though, but intent isn't wrong. My whole counter would be I would be in prison forever. I've intended to do a lot of things. I've planned to do a lot of things. I've gone very close to, but I didn't. And most of us have done something like that before.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fine. You have law enforcement there to intercept them, and they did have a gun. They're in a certain, like we could set certain guidelines, like it got this close, or we knew it almost for certainly was. But to intercept far beyond the point of giving a person to abandon it themselves is unacceptable, because we are convicting people of attempted murder or conspiracy to commit murder violence without ever doing anything.
I need to ask you this. In the situations where that you would be in jail for
I'd be in
intent
prison for life.
So
yeah.
In those situations, were you sharing that information publicly?
Sometimes. Yeah.
On social media and to the world, not just like to the people you know?
Both. At various different points in my life.
Now that's wild to me.
Today, there's no way, like my internet history as a teen, there is no way I would have made it through high school without being in prison. No chance. And part of that I despise so much because the internet landscape has shifted so much, right? Like I was in all kinds of sketchy shit. But like part of that was, and it's like so like creepy and weird to say now as an adult myself, but there were so many like random, and many of them could have been super pervy, super bad intentioned, but so many random adults that because I was speaking my mind about violent things or like wanting to die or my thoughts of what was wrong in the world, so many people, even if their intentions were bad, were the ones pulling me aside to like course correct me, to like ask why I was saying these things or like where I wanted this to go. Like it's so hard to imagine today because it would never happen that way. But strangers on the internet were often the ones like saving me in situations where if that would have gone to a cop instead, my life would be drastically different. That's why I hate entrapment so much. Until I pulled the trigger, I didn't pull the trigger.
I feel like, yeah, entrapment's a different thing.
But now, like, they arrested a dude from Coltrane like 5 years ago. He had like 10,000 rounds and a couple semi-automatics in his trunk. And he bought them at a gun store in a parking lot. The guns themselves were actually legal, but he bought them from a federal agent posing undercover who basically convinced him to buy the guns to commit this, like, it was like he was writing basically like violent fanfic, and they talked him up long enough. He was clearly like diagnosable with something, but they talked him up long enough to get him to say he was going to do X, Y, and Z, and that they had a good connect on this gun, and they would sell it to him at a gun store. This dude goes away for 20 years. It's like, in reality, I can understand. This dude was probably severely troubled.
It's like, if he was that easily convinced to do it.
But it wasn't easily. It's over the course of a year. You have a little devil.
A year?
Yeah, that's
I don't think that's long at all.
I could talk anyone into murder if I had their ear for a year.
We've been doing this for 2 years already.
If I was singularly trying to manipulate a weak-minded person into murder, I could make a lot of ground. And most FBI agents with psychological training dealing with mentally ill people can too. Like, the reality is, this dude's getting 20 years in prison, right? Local dude. Probably is a piece of shit. And the reality is, maybe it really would have been 50-50 he kills someone or not. My guess is it's probably a lot higher of a chance he would have killed himself than anyone else, because that's mostly what happens. But I don't think it's okay to like intercept a year ahead of time and manipulate someone at a weak point instead of trying to help, instead of being the stranger that helps them, to be the person that convinces them to go for it.
I don't disagree with that.
I know you don't, but I feel like that's kind of like an extreme example of why we have to be allowed to have at least more ground to correct our mistakes than to be charged with the equivalent of having done something that didn't happen. Right? David Koresh could have had that compound. Let's ignore all the sexual abuse because we both have already acknowledged that has changed things, especially with the children. It does change things. And there's more room for intervention.
If it's just him, I mean, even saying him and some of his friends that want to live there and have a bunch of guns.
Yes, but they have all the guns, and they're constantly preaching about death to America. They're homegrown ISIS, and they are constantly preaching about real threats to the local governor or whatever, and they're for sure gonna do it. They're for sure gonna do it, but every day they're just collecting more ammo and making more plans. And time goes on. At what point in the current world or your world are you saying that's too far? We can't allow people to say that. We have to stop them before they act. Because in my world, I think we should allow them a very long runway. Because even if I think most of the time harm will come of it, even if I know most of the time this is going to go bad, I don't know the future to say it is every time, and I'm not willing to stop maybes, to thought crime intervene.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even necessarily think that's a smart thing. I just don't think that's acceptable.
Let me ask this. And it doesn't have to be a long answer. I want to ask you the same question about the kill everyone button. But
okay.
There aren't even kids there. The situation that's occurring inside that building is the situation that we just painted a second ago, where it's just David Koresh and a bunch of adults that are just been talking all the, honestly, they weren't even like really talking a bunch of shit. They weren't even caught for that, but sure. Let's say they were. Let's say they were talking a bunch of shit and they got, the ATF showed it because they realized they had all these illegally purchased or modified weaponry and shit like that, like they did. Mm-hmm. And then the situation plays out how it already was.
Now do I push the button?
Now do you push the button?
I'll preface it by saying, if in my ideal world we did have more control on religious expression, that because their beliefs were based off religious, what was the word I used earlier? Congregation. I think there's more room to intervene if that were the case.
Mm-hmm.
But without that, there is no perceivable world I can imagine where it is okay to press that button and kill them all. Because they have not done anything violent to anyone else. They have not hurt anyone else. If anything, they still shot the first cops the first few days. Okay, that's kind of a X factor. I wasn't considering that part of the equation. If we're
we don't have to.
Yeah, because that does change things, because no one truly knows who shot first. So that does change things. Because especially if they didn't choose first, I think the next acceptable option is you build the fucking wall and you isolate them. That was their choice. I think we oblige them. But I don't think we have the right to say a bunch of guys who want to own guns and talk about crazy shit in a compound are doing anything wrong, because I don't believe they are. Theoretically. Realistically, they probably are, and we know these ones did, but I think groups of people should be allowed to.
Now, what that means is, And this is boiled down.
Yeah.
But what that means is you have more patience for people who are threatening violence. I was going to say...
I know where you're going, but the fact of the matter is yes, I do. We should have more
people that
patience.
are making clear their intentions, making clear what they believe to be their intentions, whether they commit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Making clear that they intend to, or they at least
have
role play
to. Yeah.
At the very least, they're role playing as people that want to
be violent,
hurt people and bring violence.
Yes.
You do have the patience for that.
Yes, but I do not have any patience for the people who, as soon as you make the phone call, are 100% going to enact violence because of potential violence. That's where I draw the line, is that you can have an unlimited potential for violence where I can have patience for, but I don't have patience for real violence for potential violence. Right? Think about like a riot.
No, you're making a point.
But let's do Black Lives Matter riots. And we are the cops. And there are 99.5, I think, percent of the Black Lives Matter riots were minimal to completely nonviolent across the country. That's not what Fox News wanted to say, but that's reality. 99% of it.
Most people would call them protests.
I agree.
Yeah.
But there were also riots, so it's hard.
Yeah. There
were some. 99% are good to go. There was probably a little too much destruction of property, but for the most part, good to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considering time and circumstance and what was happening, these were pretty much almost entirely nonviolent, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're the cops. We're guarding the Capitol building, right? I gotta put another asterisk. The couple times things did get violent, it was pretty bad. So I'm gonna both sides it a little bit. There was some bad shit, but for the most part, really good, well handled.
Mm-hmm.
We're the police.
That's not my sounds sarcastic, but I'm with you. I'm with you.
We're the police. We're guarding the capital of an imaginary city. I don't know. Black Lives Matter protest. I was at some of those protests too, so I'm going to add another asterisk. But we're the police this time. In this life, in our next karmic life, we're the police regarding the Capitol, and we're severely outnumbered. There's 100 of them to each one of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it goes violent, we could be murdered, right? It's very likely we could get murdered. Now, we're looking into the crowd. We're scoping shit out. We're trying to stay on the P's and Q's and look at our 12 and 6 or whatever the fuck, right? We got all the acronyms going around. We're super on it because we're really cool cop guys today. And we see some shady looking, trashy punks, right? And I see what I believe to be a pressure cooker. Mm-hmm. This is a fucking bomb, right? This is a homemade device, right?
Mm-hmm.
An IED, right? Could just be a pot roast.
Yeah, he could have just brought food down because he's going to plan on staying for a while. Yeah,
he's feeding his comrades. They're camped out. Now, realistically, it's probably a very dumb thing to bring to a protest, right?
Right, exactly.
But I see lots of shady shit when I'm looking out into this mass of people, right? And let's say I even agree with what they're protesting for.
Yeah.
But I see a handful of people that have things that clearly look like bombs. They're all blacked out, wearing bandanas, and they have PVC piping and crock pots. And it's like, oh shit, this is for sure. They're for sure going to bomb us. They are going to get violent, and we're all going to die. And I don't think we can stop them if this starts. So I have a couple options.
Yeah.
And the main option law enforcement typically goes for is to enact real violence to meet that potential violence in hopes that the ethical algebra equals that we do harm reduction or the least amount of harm, or we at least protect ourselves because we stopped maybe violence, right? I saw somebody with a sketchy looking bag and I'm going to stop them so no one else gets hurt.
Right.
I think that's bullshit. That's why real riots start. It's because the cop assaults or shoots the person that maybe was going to do harm. Maybe they even had a weapon, but they didn't use it yet. And that's how every fucking riot ever starts. I mean,
I think the main problem with this is
guts. You gotta have the guts to get hurt. That's the reality. Is more violent shit's probably gonna happen.
I think the idea is that I think the problem is that there is more of a gray area than people. There's more variables.
Yes,
to each given situation.
Because people are like, oh, he posted this. He said he was going to do this. He had this diagnosis. He's on this medication. He was for sure going to kill that person. He did. This is his background. This is where he comes from. This is how he expressed he felt in private. We know for sure. That means that he was going to do X, Y, and Z, and we are going to send him to a cage like an animal because of what we think would happen.
I don't think that's where I would feel like it doesn't need to go to directly, hey, you're going to go to jail. It's going to be, hey,
that's our world.
We need to talk to you about this.
I understand.
We need to figure out if this is a credible threat or if this is something that
if you were
you're just expressing yourself.
If you were all of law enforcement, we had 1 million of you that I trusted and knew could truly sort through that had the empathy, but also
that's the huge part of it is that so different. Much of law enforcement, I think, law enforcement is law enforcement, but I think what a big push in the, in the last couple years, especially has been like with the, defund the police and the shit like that. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's even cops out there like, yeah, if you're going to take what we do and divide it up and have different sections of people that are like more focused on what's the job title they were saying, it wasn't, like just people that were working with the city that weren't like, they're not cops. They're not
peacekeeper.
Someone that's, people that are more specialized with, that get more than just a fucking 6-month boot camp and then you're given a badge and a gun. People that were specialized in mental health and people that were specialized in,
There's a lot of pitfalls there, though.
I mean, yeah, but you're covering more bases, though. I feel like there are pitfalls in any direction you go to, but there are, if you're spreading out the thing effect, what you have then is the ability to prevent situations that could cause people to commit crime. People are still going to commit crime. But if you are making better situations or you're trying to help people's lives individually, community standpoint of like,
sure, that
is by and large taking the reasons where people feel like they need to do crime. Not because they want to do this because it seems like fun or, like you're still going to have, people doing dumb shit. But when you take away the aspects that make people feel like they have to commit crimes to survive, that's a huge amount of people that feel like they have to make this choice just to get by. I feel like that's still the intent that's still preventing crime. That's different from the freedom of speech thing. That's not what we started off on that and then got into crime. But right. Yeah, but that's where when I think of preventing crime, that's what I mean is more of on a social level, fixing problems that could prevent crime.
If we're talking like real like real change. I mean, I'm with you for sure. I think the short-sightedness is America still doesn't give a fuck about mental health, and that approach is not going to get any substantial results anytime soon.
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
I still think it is the right approach, but
even if they were like today, we're like, hey, we're gonna start going this direction. It's not gonna be like it's gonna be decades.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like we're closer to that than we ever have been, and that's a good thing. We have the newer generation of people that also feels that way. So, the newer generation of people that's also way more open about mental health and recognizing it as an issue.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that.
So
there's just a lot of problems still too.
Yeah, man, we're all gonna fucking expire before the problems are fixed. Yeah, the problems are fixed, but
I meant specifically. There's a lot of problems with the counter push too, right? The ACAP, we need to replace cops with counselors. There's a lot of problems there too, and not that I agree with the spirit of it, right? And we need more of that approach. But I think it's like anything, like I've said before, whether it's a Malcolm X or an MLK, like you need both, right? You need the extremists and the peacekeepers. And I think in specific to Waco, right, you would be the negotiator and I would be
You'd be the sniper killer. Sitting in the fucking garage out back.
Yeah, you need both to make shit happen every time.
It's the other one to think about. Like, these people were out there for fucking weeks. And just
their life.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. That would be, talk about PTSD or like a high level stress.
Seriously.
For everyone.
And then like they're playing those blaring, the music and the lights and shit. And like, that's not just affecting the people inside.
No, that was the whole Guantanamo Bay shit. They had to stop playing shit till they got padded cell rooms because it was driving the torturers crazy.
It's fucking... It was like fucking dog.
Yeah, I know. So
we're gonna make everyone suffer because, I mean, at least they knew it worked.
So what's our conclusion? David Koresh, pretty cool dude.
Yeah, man. He's invited to the cookout. Let's. God damn.
God, what a piece of shit.
What an absolute piece of trash.
I would have loved to have had a beer with him or an injection or two of heroin, because what an interesting dude, because he went from so pathetic, absolute weakness, incompetency, anxiety, like spineless little nerdy kid to like mentally ill beast monster cruelty. Confident leader.
He had a full, about 100 people that were like, "You're God."
Yeah, and from even if you watch the videos of him when he first was joining the cults or like his younger years, to see he looks like the nerdy little wimpy kid at any local high school, and to see that transformation it's like a behold the great red dragon. Like, holy fuck, what the fuck did this dude do? Like, it is severely interesting. Like, an absolute terrible, I would shoot him in the head person. But fuck, I would love to understand what happened in his head more.
Mm-hmm. Man, that fucking cult leader shit, man, that's I
have really a certain amount of admirance for
you gotta be a certain kind of person to pull it off, man. And the people that do, there's some fucking wild people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's long enough of us jibber-jabbing about some shit.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. Thank you to Approaching Human for the use of his music. You can find his work on SoundCloud at Approaching-Human.
Thanks, John.
Make sure to check out the show page at Trashcats Trashcast on Instagram for news and art from the show. Check out Facebook for the memes.
If you're super bored, you can check out my trashy art on Instagram at SkyZXSKYZSX. I'm working on something I really, really fucking like. It's like the most excited I've been about something for a while, so that'll be up next week or so. And then next week we got a couple cool topics we're playing with. We might just take it easy and have some relaxation too, because we've been Hardworking.
You know, speaking of relaxation, Stephen, I want to say shout out to our sponsor this week, Yankee Candle Company. If you need,
They will never sponsor us.
If you want your house to smell like cinnamon rolls or vanilla with honey, you can always count on the folks at Yankee Candle Company to spruce your home right up.
Do they have a CS tear gas flavor?
Oh, man, you know they do, Stephen. And it's on sale right now if you go to the website and use the code TRASHCAT. You'll get 20% off at checkout.
Use the code WACO.
Yeah. Celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the Waco. Use code WACO30 to get 30% off here. God damn. That's going to be all for us today. Stay classy, eat trashy.
Go fast, eat trash.
Hey, God will have to sort that out, won't he?